Laurie, why don't you go ahead and kick us off? And again, we'll let people continue to join, but go ahead and kick us off.
Thank you, Shannon. Good evening and welcome to Charlotte Habitat Region's annual Building Future Housing Symposium. My name is Laurie Mumford. I'm the Vice Chair of the Habitat's Board of Directors. I'm so sorry we were not able to meet in person this year, but really looking forward to doing it soon. Building Futures is a capstone event of Beloved Community, an initiative that was kicked off on Martin Luther King Day in January. The Beloved Community is inspired by Dr. King's and celebrates Habitat's vision that our community is one of diversity. Together, we identify and celebrate our inherent differences. We acknowledge and respect all members of our community and love our neighbors as we love ourselves and our own families. I'd like to recognize Lowe's for their sponsorship of Beloved Community and tonight's Building Futures event. Lowe's support for affordable homeownership and home preservation in the Charlotte region is immense. Later tonight, Ben Boyd, VP of Communication at Lowe's, will moderate the panel discussion between our keynote speaker, Dr. Andre Perry, and Habitat's President and CEO, Laura Belcher. To our audience, thank you for taking time to demonstrate your interest in Habitat and our belief that everyone deserves a decent place to live. Our mission is to bring people together to build homes, community, and hope. This work is only possible with you. We so appreciate you joining us online tonight. Now I will turn the virtual stage over to this evening's keynote speaker, Dr. Andre Perry. Dr. Perry is a nationally known and respected commentator on race, structural inequality, and education. He is a regular contributor to MSNBC and has been published in many national news outlets. He has also made appearances on CNN, PBS, NPR, NBC, and ABC. That's a lot of letters. Dr. Perry's research focuses on race and structural inequality, education, and economic inclusion. His recent scholarship at Brookings has analyzed Black majority businesses, cities, and institutions in America, focusing on valuing assets worthy of increased investment. Tonight's presentation will deliver insights from this research and his book, Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Properties in America's Black Cities. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Andre Perry.
Thank you, Laurie, for that wonderful introduction. It's a pleasure to be with all of you virtually, at least. I apologize for not being able to come down. I had a very serious challenge in my family that required me to stay, and I think the folks in Charlotte know something about family. But at least we can be here together virtually. Technology is a blessing in that regard. And I love talking about how to value property and people at the same time. So I'm going to jump right into my presentation because it does feature how I introduce myself as well. Hopefully you can see my presentation, worthy of investment, restoring value to Black communities. And someone give me a holler if these slides don't advance. As was stated, a lot of this information can be found in my book, Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black Cities, available wherever fine books are sold. At the Brookings Institute, I study Black majority cities and neighborhoods. There's obviously too many majority Black neighborhoods to put on the map, but here you see the majority Black cities where the share of the Black population is 50% or higher. And there's a lot of them. There's more than 1,200 throughout the United States, mostly in the South, going all the way up through the Southeast. You have some in the Midwest, and I study the assets within those dots. Speaking of one of the most important assets is home, and I'm going to start with my home, the place where I grew up. This is 1320 Hill Avenue, Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania. Wilkinsburg is a small Black majority municipality surrounded by Pittsburgh on 3 sides. And you can see the home is boarded up. It's falling apart. You can buy this home if you agree to pay the taxes on it. To the municipalities. It's valued somewhere between $13,000 and $23,000, but the home is worth so much more to me. You see that woman in the upper right-hand corner? Her name is Elsie Boyd. I call her Mom. As the story was told to me when I was born, there was a deal made that would have her take me from the hospital, from my biological mother, and she would take me, and I'm not sure if that was supposed to be a temporary stay, but I stayed for most of my child life. As you, Mom did what many matriarchs did at the time when families were troubled. She took in kids. My mom at the time was poor. She already had a child at 15. She had me when she was 17. And she took in kids, and she took in a lot of kids. You could see many different varieties here, some Black, some white, some biracial, but we had all one thing in common. We were all struggling in a city that was trying to cope with US Steel leaving town. Another reason why she had to take me in was my father. My father, pictured here, was a heroin addict. He was in and out of prison for all of my child life. He eventually was murdered in prison a day before his 27th birthday. And I was told that he made poor choices. So for my book, Know Your Price, I narrate how he lived by examining the built environment around him, because all choices are encompassed in a place. And so I wanted to look at the things that impacted his choices. Now, I'm going to save you a history lesson here, but I'll just briefly talk about some of the things I found before I get into the data. He lived in areas that were redlined, where the Homeowners Loan Corporation drew red lines around Black neighborhoods, determining them too hazardous for refinancing. He and my mom lived in areas where they were displaced by highway construction. The highway administration as many of you know, place highways on top of Black communities. They had to deal with the unfulfilled promise of urban renewal. They lived in areas where there was significant predatory lending, and they couldn't necessarily leave because there were restrictive housing covenants all around them, whites-only neighborhoods. But I wanted to look at the impact on home prices of those various policies on home prices. So that's what we did. This is a chart that looks at home prices by neighborhood. And so on this x-axis, on that bottom row, that's the percentage or share of Black people in a neighborhood. On the y-axis, it's indicated by the price on the bar charts, on top of the bars. That's the average list price, and we looked at both Zillow data and census data. And as you can see, as the share of the Black population increases, the average price decreases. Homes in areas where the population of the Black share of the population is less than 1% on average are priced about $340,000. And they're about half as much in areas where the share of the Black population is 50% or higher. Now, a lot of people will say that's because of education, that's because of crime. But those are things you can look for or control for in a study, and that's what we did. We took that absolute price and we controlled for structural characteristics, so square footage, windows, all the physical attributes of the home. And then we control for neighborhood amenities, education, crime, walkability, all those fancy Zillow metrics, because we wanted to get an apples to apples comparison between homes in Black neighborhoods and homes in white neighborhoods, controlling for all those things. And what we found pretty much astounds that homes in Black neighborhoods on average are priced 23% less, about $48,000 per home less than their equivalents in white neighborhoods. That's costing Black neighborhoods roughly about $156 billion in lost equity. And so when we're talking about housing affordability, how people pay for their home, that $156 billion is a significant number. And this is happening where, all across the country. Wherever you see a magenta circle, that's where what I call housing devaluation is occurring. Wherever you see a green circle, that's where homes in Black neighborhoods are actually priced higher than their white counterparts. In the Charlotte metro area, we're talking about a 13% difference, about $23,000 per home. And again, this ranges all across the country. Let's look at Lynchburg, Virginia. Lynchburg, Virginia. If you helicoptered a home in a Black neighborhood in Lynchburg and place it in a white neighborhood with similar social circumstances, same type of home, it would increase in value by 81%. Rochester, New York, in a -65. Jacksonville, Florida, -47. Detroit, -37. Indianapolis, -17. Again, there are places in which homes in Black neighborhoods are priced higher. Nashville, believe it or not, +10%. Wichita Falls, +16. Boston, +23. But I always have to remind people, Boston is no less racist than Lynchburg, but the home prices are higher. But this $156 billion, when we're talking about affordability, I want you to put this in, I want us to put this in perspective so we understand what $156 billion is. $156 billion would have financed more than 4.4 million Black-owned businesses based upon the average amount Black people use to start their firms. It would have covered more than 8.1 million four-year degrees based upon the average amount of a four-year public diploma. Replaced the pipes in Flint, Michigan nearly 3,000 times over, covered nearly all of Hurricane Katrina damages, double the annual economic burden of the opioid crisis. And what I should have done is give the average down payment, the number of down payments in this country. It is, I mean, it's a big number. Let's just say that it's a big number. And this is why I always say when things go wrong in Black communities, when things aren't going well, we blame Black people. The reason why I put that last bullet there, the double annual economic burden of the opioid crisis, it is clear that if my father lived in a neighborhood where the home values were priced higher, he would have had a greater opportunity to start a business, to go to college. The drug use probably would not be criminalized. His life and my life would have been fundamentally different. This is why I say that there's nothing wrong with Black people that ending racism can't solve. You know, again, when things go wrong in Black neighborhoods, we blame Black people. We don't look at the underlying policy conditions that predict outcomes. Now, that always reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from the Vietnamese philosopher Thich Nhat Hanh, who recently died not that long ago, a few months ago. And one of my favorite sayings that he used to say is, when lettuce isn't growing, you don't blame the lettuce. You look to see if the lettuce is getting sunlight. You look to see if the soil is rich. You look to see if it's getting rainwater. You never blame the lettuce. But when things go wrong in Black communities, when things aren't growing in Black communities, we're constantly blaming the lettuce. We're not looking for the levels of investment. The reason why I'm excited about, and actually a little bit disheartened if I could not join you today, when you're talking about habitat, humanity, you're really talking about an investment in people, giving folks a chance, an opportunity to grow. I want to play a clip. This happened a few years ago before all the news reports around appraisal bias. Now we have lots of anecdotal evidence of homeowners when seeking to refinance their home, their mortgages, getting an appraisal and they suspect it's low, so they quote unquote whitewash their home, remove all the black books, the black art, the hair products, the clothes, and then they order a second appraisal, but this time they also get a white stand-in, a neighbor or a friend to meet the appraiser, and sometimes coming in hundreds of thousands of dollars higher after that second appraisal. But I want to show you a clip of me testifying on Capitol Hill in the Financial Services Committee with the appraisal industry and talking about is there discrimination in housing. Take a listen to this.
If you think black people are being discriminated when their property is being appraised, would you kindly raise your hand? One person on the panel. If you think that, for fear that I'm not communicating well, if you think that black people are not being discriminated against when their property is being appraised, if you think they're not being discriminated against, kindly raise your hand. Okay, hands now, we're getting some consternation, I see.
You know, and I don't show that clip to try to shame anyone. What I want to be clear about, these are facts that have been confirmed, they've been validated in many different other respects. Freddie Mac, the GSE, who keeps our mortgages liquid, has confirmed racial bias. There's been a number of other studies that have come out since. These are facts. So we have policies and practices in place that are extracting wealth from people every single day and opportunity every day. And I'm just going to get into one of the facets of this, because along with housing, or loss of equity, is the loss of economic and community development. And I'm just going to show some of the findings from a few reports related to the lack of equity in housing. Now, most people start their businesses using the equity in their home. And we know that Black people represent about 14% of the population, but only 2% of the nation's employer firms. Only 1% of Black business owners were able to attain a loan their founding year, compared to 7% of white entrepreneurs. And Black entrepreneurs are denied bank loans more than twice as often as their white peers. And when we do get loans, they're at higher interest rates. About half of Black businesses survived the Great Recession, compared to 60% of white-owned firms. And we know that there's been difficulty with the PPP loan initially when it was rolled out. So there's some issues there. But what we wanted to do is do a similar report to the housing report to see if that lack of investment is due to quality. So we got business revenue and the race of the owner from Dun & Bradstreet, but we scraped all the Yelp data from businesses all across the country to get a sense of quality. Again, controlling for neighborhood conditions and wealth. And what we found is that Black, Brown, and Asian-owned businesses are rated just as highly or higher than white-owned businesses, so they get higher ratings, but they get less stars as the neighborhoods get Blacker. Let me explain. That magenta line, that's Black, Brown, and Asian-owned businesses. That gray line is white-owned firms. As you can see, in every kind of neighborhood, minority-owned businesses are ranked higher. But as the neighborhoods get Blacker, the perception of the businesses go down, showing you that perception of worthiness of investment is correlated with the share of the Black population. That's not good. Because this is costing highly rated businesses a large sum. This is costing highly rated businesses upwards of $4 billion annually. And it makes sense. There's an old adage that my folks used to say in the neighborhood when I was growing up. They would say, our ice is just as cold. or ICE is just a cult. They knew that if you don't frequent businesses in the hood, you distort the market, one, where you're forcing high quality businesses to compete with low quality businesses, and you're just not getting revenue in the neighborhoods. Now, again, I just wanted to share a few things. Black people, as I stated, represent about 14% of population, but only 2% of the employer firms with more than one employee. If Black businesses were the equivalent of the Black population, there would be 800,000 more Black businesses in the United States, 800,000. And just to give that, to show the different racial categories and representation. Again, white people represent about 75% of the population, but 83% of the employer firms. Again, Latino population, 18% of the population, only 6% of employer firms. Asian population, 6%, but 10% of employer firms. In Charlotte, Black people comprise approximately 25% of the Charlotte metro area's population, the metro, not the city. But Black businesses are only 4% of the employer firms. If Black businesses were the equivalent of the Black population in Charlotte, there would be close to 14,000 more Black businesses in the area. You can find this data in this new report, Black-owned businesses in U.S. cities. We just released this last month. Black-owned businesses in U.S. cities, the challenges, solutions, and opportunity. You can look at your Charlotte numbers, and we have other numbers as well. And the main findings here that no metro area in the U.S. has a share of the Black-owned employer firms that matches or exceeds the Black population. Black entrepreneurs have found a niche in the Southeast. There's a higher percentage there. And Fayetteville, North Carolina's your neighbors actually have the highest share of Black businesses compared to the Black population. So I always bring this up because equity is stimulus. If we can get some equity, you would drive revenue growth all across the country. Now, I'm going to close out with some solutions. How do you counter devaluation? You got to direct capital towards Black, brown, and Asian-owned firms. Cut the check. We got to figure out ways to increase the number of homeowners and business owners. That's pivotal. And we need to remove the unnecessary bureaucratic barriers for entry into entrepreneurship and homeownership. I don't know how many times I have to go to a business grant program, and they're having folks do a financial literacy course. While financial literacy is important, and I think we all need it, is not the reason why we have devaluation. And that was highlighted in our business document, our business report. Black people's businesses are as good. Why are they having to jump these extra hoops? We really need to cut as much red tape and cut the check and invest in increasing assets for Black communities. But we do have to invest in place. But if you invest in place and not people, you'll effectively increase property values, and people don't keep pace. So that's why we need to always invest in people, so in creating more owners. But again, we do have to invest in place. Devaluation robs communities of the resources needed to develop. And we need to incentivize businesses to operate adjacent to Black neighborhoods so we can drive greater revenues and services to the neighborhoods and Black communities. We need to remove policies that extract wealth from Black communities. In the appraisal issue, the price comparison model is fraught because, let me explain, the price comparison model is when we compare homes to others in a neighborhood to get a sense of value. The problem with it is that when you compare homes to others in a neighborhood that's been discriminated against, you effectively recycle discrimination over and over again. And we got to figure out ways to stop the damage before it starts. Just as we score policies budget impact, we should score for racial equity as well. Before we have a housing policy, before we have a business policy, before we have any policy, we should try to do a check to see how it's going to impact people of color. And we need to install anti-racist policies that encourage inclusion. I just have a few more things to increase home ownership. We obviously need to do more in terms of policy change. I really do believe, and others do too, we need to increase support for small dollar mortgage loan programs. As homes in Black neighborhoods already devalued, sometimes there's homes in neighborhoods that are priced below a point a bank will back with a mortgage. And so we just need new mortgage products as a result. We need to reduce uneven costs of mortgages for Black homeowners. There's a lot of discrimination in terms of lending and on rate and terms, refinancing options. We need to really scrub that racism from those policies. You go extend credit and down payment assistance. This is pivotal. The wealth divide is white family have about 8 times the amount of wealth as Black families, and it really shows up in down payment and credit. When you have less wealth, you have to take out more debt. If you take out more debt, you're going to have in general more or lower credit ratings. And we need to adopt new credit scoring practices overall. The credit scoring just really reflects our discriminatory policies that prohibited Black people from getting wealth in this country. Just a few more things. Increase diversity in the appraisal profession. 90% of appraisers are white, 75% are male. We need certainly to do some to change those numbers. But even with that said, we must change the practices as well. We could become more diverse as a profession, but if they're using the same practices, you'll still get similar results. And we need to continue stimulus and relief efforts for homeowners and buyers in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Build Back Better has to be rejuvenated. Much of that package included some of the home ownership programs, and as it's stalled, so has our opportunities to increase home ownership. Now, again, a lot of this material you can find in my book, Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black Cities. I'm going to tell you why I named my book Know Your Price. It actually comes from my favorite play in the whole wide world, Two Trains Running by August Wilson. In that play, the main character, Memphis, is about to have his property seized through eminent domain by the city of Pittsburgh. They are building a civic arena, and this actually happened, but the story is fictional, but the events around it are real. They're building a civic arena in the highway. They are buying properties through eminent domain, and they offer to buy the main character Memphis property for $15,000. To which Memphis goes, I'm not selling my property for $15,000. I got my price. I know my price. I'm paraphrasing, but it's a refrain that's stated throughout the play. There's another character, Hambone, who makes a deal with the proprietor to paint a fence in exchange for a ham. He paints the fence, but he never gets his ham. Throughout the play, he says, give me my ham, give me my ham, give me my ham. And we don't know if he had mental illness before he painted the fence, but he eventually goes mad and dies demanding his ham. Now, there is a happy ending to the story. I know you're like, wow, that's pretty sad. But there actually is a happy ending. The main character, Memphis, gets $35,000 for as property, and it's assumed he's getting the white rate or the market rate. But the moral of the story is you got to know you have value. You got to know you have worth. What I try to do with Know Your Price is give people the price to stand on. That's what a lot of my research is about, getting to that price that people can say, you know what, I'm worth this much, and I'm going to demand it. I don't want people to go crazy. I don't want people to die demanding their price. That's why organizations like Habitat are needed. We need to support folks who are worthy of investment. And so with that, I'm looking forward to this panel discussion. So if we can transition to the panel, that will be wonderful. But thank you, Habitat, Laura, for inviting me. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Perry. Great information. And on behalf of Lowe's, it's a real honor and privilege to be here this evening with you and Laura and to have this conversation. I look forward to the Q&A lighting up with some audience questions. But while we wait for that to happen, I'm going to jump in maybe with a few that are on my mind. One thing that really strikes me about what you shared, right, is just the deeply personal way that you started this, the deep connection of your personal story into Know Your Price. And can you talk about, there was countless ways to share this information, right? To craft this narrative. Why was the personal aspect of this for you so obviously central to the information that you share, the points that you made tonight and in the book?
I'm going to answer that multiple ways, so bear with me. One of the things that people say or ask me all the time is, what made you so different from your father? What makes you so different from your father? And I have to reply, I'm no different. I'm no different. I share 50% of his genetics. I grew up in the same neighborhoods. I hung out around the same family members, relatively speaking. Racism snatches up people in many different ways. My father should be here presenting to you today. And when people aren't given a chance at the American dream to own a home, to reap the value, you're robbing people of an opportunity to thrive. So for me, I make it personal because it is, right now I'm doing well, but don't talk about the wealth. I mean, my wealth profile would have been fundamentally different. My children's wealth profile would have been fundamentally different if my father lived in a neighborhood where the home values were accurate and he had an opportunity to own. So for me, I make it, and there's another reason why I make it personal. There's a lot of researchers who they talk as if they're not part of the problem or part of the solution. We're in this together. And I know there's folks out there that, they want to sit on the sidelines, that may watch the audience and they may applaud. But when you do nothing, you're part of the problem. So I look to organizations like Habitat and others to help organize, to be a support, because we can't stay on the sideline. And this is complicated stuff. Ben and Laura and the team, they do this for a living. And so that's why we need those kind of supports in our communities. We need corporations to get involved, to take a stand, to invest. And I'm on corporations because a lot do not invest in our communities. and increasing assets. It's not enough just to provide to a cause. Are you giving somebody an asset? Can someone say after a contribution that they have a home, they have less student debt, they have a 401k? Does an investment actually change someone's life? It's not enough just to like give sympathy money. Did you create an asset? And if you don't, you know, that might be nice. It might be, you know, you get a pat on the back, but it's not trying to close that racial wealth divide. It's not trying to improve education. It's not trying to increase business ownership. These are the things that matter. I mean, but you know, I'm getting a little off base.
No. I think that, look, I think that's a tremendous point, right? Is it an authentic effort to have impact, or is it a check the box, right?
Exactly.
Or is it a writing a check to check the box, right? And so those are completely different. You started tonight by talking about how to value people and property at the same time. Laura, that seems to me so intrinsic in the work that is done, you know, at Habitat every single day. Can you talk about that mindset and also then connect that to building futures, right, as an initiative that, you know, that was started choicefully and with purpose? Lori laid out a bit of that thinking at the beginning, but can you connect that thread for us to what Dr. Perry shared tonight, and that mindset of not just creating an asset, but as you said, Dr. Perry, right, an asset that has impact, that creates opportunity, that creates change?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, thanks, Ben, and Andre. Thanks for being here. I think, you know, when I think about Habitat, you know, we are working to build houses and bring additional assets to the community. But we're doing that in a way that is affordable for families so that they are able to build their economic futures, right? So, you know, when we build a house and we sell it to a family, we ensure that the family can afford the mortgage, right? So we right size the mortgage for what the family can afford. So it's not just about the number of units that we can put on the ground, but what kind of, you know, affordability can we bring to that family so that they can build their wealth, their generational wealth, their economic mobility. We know in this community that we need more of that. And so, you know, we're pairing up both the caring for the asset with the caring for the family. And all of our families that are moving into Habitat built homes have been through homeownership readiness classes. They're probably oftentimes first generation home buyers. And so we want to position them in a place where they can thrive. And to understand the difference between being a renter mindset and a homeowner mindset. And so that's part of what we're committed to doing and wanting to bring to everybody. And then your question around building futures and why do we do this event and that kind of thing. This started intentionally several years ago. We wanted to heighten the awareness for the community and heighten the conversation. We want to really focus on that intersection of social justice and the role of housing in our community. And we feel like doing that year in, year out to raise that dialogue, raise that awareness, invite folks like Dr. Perry to come and talk with us and to share research and you know, be thought-provoking so that it can stir up the conversation intentionally around what Habitat can be doing and what the rest of the community can be doing and what policy do we need to be looking at for the future.
Can I just add one thing to that? You know, I do this research around home values really to see how communities value people. You know, how we value people comes out in the wash in home values. And so when I look at organizations, nonprofits, for-profits, I really do check to see, are you increasing someone's asset and wealth profile? Because if you are not, you're really like not changing much. I mean, it's vitally in a sense of you're not really valuing people. You might feel sorry about a situation, but when you really start to value people, their assets increase. And And so that's how I take the temperature. Do you really care about the folks in Charlotte? Then we need to start seeing some increased home ownership, increased value in home, increased businesses. That's how you see if you really care. Because I tell you what, we see increase in many white communities, right? It's really a reflection of who we value. And so for me, I do this research and these numbers, but it's all about people. It's not about these inanimate objects that they are vital, but it's about the people.
Dr. Perry, I want to lean into the numbers a second. I'm a little bit of a data geek, but I don't want to say that in a way that you're going to ask me any numbers, because I can't walk in your wake in that regard, right? But you talked about a couple of different numbers as it related to Charlotte, right? If I took notes correctly, difference in property value was about 13.3% to the negative compared to white home ownership. And then you talked about employer businesses. And while Black residents account for 25% of our population, we're 4% of those employer businesses. Are one of those more important as a driver of the other? Right? Is there correlation between those two data sets in the way that you've looked from your research as, like, you know, as a municipality, is one lever more important to pull than the other? They're both very, very important, but I'm just wondering, does one have greater disproportionate impact on the other?
Well, I'll answer it this way. Most people start their businesses using the equity in their home.
Equity. Yeah.
Like you won't increase business ownership without increasing home ownership and home equity. You just won't. I mean, it's a lot of people think, oh, you get a business. That's a very small number of people who start a business with a business loan. It's almost all personal wealth. So I would answer it, hey, you increase business ownership, you make it much more likely somebody can start a business. So but I just want to be clear. The reason why I put that business part there is to maintain community development and economic mobility. You do need to churn some business at a local level, and every neighborhood needs a main street. Like everyone needs certain services, and you know. So I try to put both in play, because sometimes we only talk about business or we only talk about housing. They're related, but obviously I'm trying to increase home ownership and home value so that folks can actually start businesses as well.
And one question that's from our audience, right, and leans into where we were going there. Are there examples of what municipalities are doing that's combating devaluation and or driving home ownership in the way that you're talking about here? Like what's a model of success that we could look at?
Well, I actually think it's, and I mean, it didn't happen. Well, I was going to say it's not a deliberate thing, but when you look at Nashville, Nashville actually has higher home values in Black neighborhoods. And what's interesting there, and they have, you know, decent business development. I mean, no one's exceptional. But what you see there are anchor institutions. You have HBCUs, you have Fisk, Meharry Medical School, there's a Bible college and something else. And you have essentially low relative poverty, because a lot of folks are working in those institutions. So it goes without saying, if you have a better job market, you have much more likelihood of home ownership. We always forget about how do people pay for a home, mostly. And so that's why I always emphasize we got to get rid of the drags of racism in the job market, because nothing will ever be affordable if your pay's low. And so I think there are places that just have the right combination of things where you see better outcomes. But again, there's no city I can say, oh, that's the model. There's just some cities that have better outcomes. But by the way, I will say this, my organization that partnered with the social entrepreneurship organization, Ashoka, we're going to give away money to entrepreneurs who are solving for housing devaluation. And so there are entrepreneurs all around the country working on this issue. They're doing community land trusts, interesting community land trusts. They're doing new appraisal models. They're doing new mortgage products. They're doing and we want to invest in those things. So if you're interested, Google the Ashoka Brookings Challenge. And if you're a funder out there, go check it out. We're trying to give more money to more people. That would be great. But we have that. Yeah, so I'll leave it there. So there's things going on all around the country. But again, this is where I believe invest in those people, those change agents, people doing the work. There's a lot of people out there that have great ideas, great initiatives, great organizations. We need to be investing in those people and organizations who are increasing assets, period. That's my sort of tagline.
What a great concept, right? Of investing in entrepreneurs, and what a different sort of take on entrepreneurialism to look at this notion of devaluation and energy that's being put there. You know, Laura, I can't help but feel a little competitive. You know, Dr. Perry just laid out these assets in Nashville. It strikes me as a longtime Charlotte native of now 18 months, that there's not much here that we don't have, right, that they have in Nashville. So talk about what's happening here from your lens, right, as a new resident, right, certainly an exploding city in terms of growth. You can't get down anywhere in the downtown area, uptown area that's not under construction, you know, with cranes in view. And so can you talk a little bit about where you see the most innovative things happening from a value creation standpoint and Black home ownership?
Yeah, Ben, you've been here 18 months. I've been here 30 plus years, and the pace of change and the population explosion has never been greater than right now. So welcome to Charlotte, Ben. You know, I think that a little bit to what Andre was just saying, you know, there's no one silver bullet, and we need to be doing multiple things at one time, right? And so what Habitat Charlotte Region is doing is trying to step on, you know, a variety of different levers and different accelerators, right? So one thing that is relatively newer for us is that we're doing in partnership with the city of Charlotte and with some of the municipalities around us, like in Mooresville, is we're really increasing the down payment assistance that's available to families, right? This is a rising cost market. And so the families that work with us can access a greater down payment assistance. We have a commitment to and a historical track record of working more with families of color than not. So a disproportionate, when you look at the racial mix of our community, we're proud to be serving folks that have been generationally locked out of home ownership. So, you know, more down payment assistance for new units. The other thing we're doing is working, and we're doing this a lot in partnership with Lowe's and others in the community, but we're increasing our repairs on aging homes, because it doesn't do us any good to build new units and have the aging homes then fall out of inventory, right? So where we would have done 2 years ago about 80 repairs in our region, we're going to do 150 this year, right? So we're really stepping into and stepping up our commitment to repairs. That's a huge piece also of kind of our anti-displacement strategy, right? Is that if we can keep people in their homes and they can age in place in a safe and decent way, then they're less likely to leave their neighborhood and sell their home and see their neighborhood gentrified. So we want to add new units, especially in neighborhoods that have a disproportionately low home ownership rate, and then we want to preserve the units that are already there.
That's great. I'm certainly proud of that work that we're doing in terms of aging home repair. That's been a change for us, and I think a really important one to keep folks in their homes. Dr. Perry, when we think about,
can I just, before I want to, because that was one of the things in my book, Know Your Price. I mentioned, like, I talk about microloans in communities, and it's those little things. It's like when you have lower wealth profiles, you can't get that one those shingles repaired. A brick loosens up. I mean, that's how a lack of wealth really shows up in deferred maintenance issues. And the more we can do those kind of things, you increase the amount of community wealth. And that's what I really love that idea. And I hope that continues for a long time.
And one of the things that I think we're talking about, right, and Laura, you just said it, right, are these different strategies. One of the questions, Dr. Perry, is from one of the folks in the audience is the notion of development of mixed income communities and how you've looked at that in the context of your work, right? There's a push, quote, in affordable housing to disperse different income levels as mainly a benefit to low and moderate income families. What does your data say about the efficacy of that approach? Or do you have a view on that notion of mixed income communities?
So I tend to look at it this way. I think that people should be able to live and work in relatively the same place. If you have people needing people in an area, but making minimum wage, we should have a place for them to live. And it's sad that there are so many cities now where the cost of living is rising so rapidly. Even teachers, if you're a single teacher, it's hard to find affordable housing now. That's why we almost have to, I mean, no pun intended, build in affordability and particularly in density in our communities, because we're pushing the people we need farther and farther out. And eventually that collapses. I mean, and so for me, it's about how can we create housing so that people can work and live in a relatively same place. Our workforce is diverse. Our housing should be diverse.
And then Laura, in addition to more affordable housing, right, in predominantly Black communities, what else, in your view, from a Charlotte standpoint, what else needs to happen to lift up neighborhoods and ultimately prevent displacement, right? Especially, we've talked about the rapid pace of growth and change here. How is policy keeping pace in terms of preventing displacement?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to have a real intentional effort in this community around displacement, anti-displacement. I think that's real important as we talk about increasing transportation and the development along transit lines and things like that, so that that does not displace longtime residents. I think one of the things that is a challenge for longtime residents, in addition to the repairs to their homes, is the rising property taxes. In a community like ours, where the values are going up so quickly, longtime residents are getting priced out because of the property taxes. I think there's some constraints on North Carolina law that prevent us from 100% creativity in what we can do there, but I think that we can still, it's still worth the effort to look at what we can be doing around some kind of tax grants or tax assistance for folks. I think we also want to look at the rising cost of owning a car, or in some families, 2 cars. That cost is getting to the point where it matches or exceeds the cost of housing. And so we've got to figure out how do we, and Andre kind of referred to this too, but how do we put housing where the jobs are, so that people don't need, to incur this ongoing increasing cost of owning a car. Can they rely on public transportation, or in the best of circumstances, are the jobs close enough that people can walk from where they live to where they're employed? So I think we got to look at property taxes. We got to look at how we provide transportation options to reduce that cost of transportation in order to keep people in their neighborhoods.
Dr. Perry, as you think about where we are on kind of the opportunity to impact change, and again, in your opening, you talked about the built environment around your dad. when you think about the rapid pace of change in a city like Charlotte or others or other municipalities that you're looking at, how are built environments being transformed? Is the rate of change making the ability to have positive impact even harder? Like, what are the most important lessons that we can take away for our city as it relates to this notion of value and displacement? Because the change curve is not going to slow down.
I look at the deeper principle of ideas, and for me, when we talk about affordable housing, because that actually has a negative connotation in people's mind, but in some ways what we should talk about is inclusive housing, an inclusive community. Do we want to continue to have a community that is exclusive, that ultimately leads to death, destruction, devaluation? Or do we want a community that is about repairing, growth? There's multiple ways to grow. We can grow by exploiting people, or we can grow by including people. These are choices that we make. And so in lots of cities, people take the fast way, the exclusive way, and they create the conditions that ultimately led to my father dying. So it's a battle. It is a real battle, because municipalities want to show, oh, look how many people we attracted, and look at the new buildings, and how many people have we transformed? How have we closed wealth divides? These are the metrics that we should be looking at. I certainly want to see more jobs, but if you're not including metrics that are judging how we are as a community, then you're going to miss the point. And so again, I'm giving the Habitat commercial here about being inclusive. People hear affordable and they think negative. I'm like, this is about transforming communities, preventing what we've done in the past. We've learned, we've been down that road, we're dealing with it now. It's time to transform our communities, to make them places where we get along, learn together, grow together, participate together. We share a fate that we don't always realize, but our fates are linked. And so for me, it's about let's be in this together, really, and not push people aside to value them, because it ends up in a very negative result.
That's a great observation. I think perhaps maybe one more question for each of you before we draw our time together. Laura, what is the most important thing in your mind that businesses in Charlotte, and then I think that would be applicable to businesses nationwide? And Dr. Perry, if you have a thought on this question, I'd love your answer too, right? But what is the most important thing that a company like Lowe's, what can we do to create impact, and to close that wealth gap?
A couple of things, and one, I think Lowe's is a role model and is doing a lot of that, right? You're putting your resources to work. You're investing in a lot of the critical home repair work that Habitat's doing in the community. So you're doing that. But I think employers in general, in thinking about where they can invest their philanthropic activity, I think in asset building and wealth building for families is critical. So I think that's great. I think it's also looking at the workforce, right? And what are the opportunities to strengthen your workforce, to incentivize home ownership through your workforce, through down payment assistance. Is there enough adequate variety of housing styles near where your offices are? right? And being sensitive and paying attention to those kinds of things. Those are the kinds of trends that I think large employers could be looking at as they grow and are seeking the best quality workforce. They need to be looking at how to balance housing and transportation and food and access to healthcare and everything else like that, but not missing out on the housing piece, right? I mean, the last thing that will be successful for employers is if their employees have to drive an hour and a half every day each way to get to their jobs.
That's a great perspective. Dr. Gray, anything to add?
Yeah,
to that?
it goes without saying, there are external and internal things that a company can do. One, pay their employees well.
Yeah.
Make sure you pay your employees well. Make sure they have opportunities for professional growth and advancement. That goes without saying. Benefits are always critical. These are the things that enable people to purchase a home. And then, as Laura said, investing in things, and I sound like a broken record, investing in things that actually increase assets. And so those two things are for me paramount. You got to treat your employees well. Respect them in pay, respect them in advancement, but also invest in those entities and people that increase assets and wealth. So when you're doing those things, and oh, wait a sec, Lowe's, let's be clear. When I talk about a reparative culture, look, Lowe's should be the poster corporation. Are we going to repair? And that's why I'm hoping, that's why this good connection with Habitat is right there. Like, that's why it makes sense. But are you creating a reparative culture?
Right.
And repairing the damage of the past, preventing the damage of the future. And if a company can embrace that, hey, then they're really serving their community well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I just actually scrolled down in the audience Q&A, so I'm going to maybe, Dr. Gray, close with two more questions for you. One was a question around update on Mr. Rice in Birmingham, Alabama, who left Charlotte, right, and purchased several dilapidated buildings there and was working to revitalize that neighborhood. And do you have an update on that story that you might be able to share with the audience tonight?
Yeah, Brian Rice, it was in Charlotte, moved to back to his hometown in Birmingham, and he in the book I have a chapter called "Buy Back the Block." He literally buys back the block because of the valuation. The property's so low, you can purchase an entire block for $100,000. That's what he did. He is still unable to get the financing to develop the block. I mean, it's a struggle. Largely, the reason why I talk about appraisals is because, remarkably, this property is appraised for something like $1 a square foot. It was something insane, and so he's in a fight to get the development dollars to build up his block. And it should never be this hard to develop a community. And this is the interesting thing. That neighborhood where he's in used to be a middle-class neighborhood. It's close to downtown. It has a stadium nearby, but it also has a lot of Black people. And there is no question, if there were more white people in that place, there would be greater investment. So if anyone's out there, reach out to Brian Rice. Great leader, great leader. But there are lots of people who are trying to buy back the block and just can't get the investment. And but Brian Rice is a leader, and I'm hoping it'll come together for him. But a lot of times it does not.
And then I think just maybe a closing thought, right? You shared your favorite play with us and some observations and how that play shaped the title of your book. What's the moral of the story? What do we take away from tonight in terms of our responsibility as individuals and our opportunity as a collective audience who've kind of come here tonight and heard what you've shared?
There's two things. I'm going to, the first thing is let's repair. Let's create a reparative culture. Let's repair together. That's an ethic that should undergird all of our work. And then the other is know you have worth. Just like homes are much more valuable than they are priced in Black community, it's a metaphor for life in many places. There are lots of people who are never given a chance. And it generally shows up in people's wealth profiles. And I'm trying to just make sure that everyone has a shot, everyone. So, because everyone has value, everyone, more value than they are priced. So I just want to thank Habitat, Lowe's. I wish I could be there. Please invite me back, and I'll make sure that the presentation gets to Habitat, and we'll get those out. And if you want to reach out, you can always follow me on Twitter or Instagram at Andre Perry EDU, Andre Perry EDU. And again, thank you for hosting me.
Andre, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your thoughts and those two major takeaways of reparative culture and knowing your worth. I think those are important thoughts as we exit. Ben, thank you for moderating the conversation tonight, monitoring the chat and all those things at the same time. We are so grateful to the support of Lowe's and sponsoring the Building Futures event tonight and all of our beloved community activities that have been going on for the past 6 weeks. So your commitment to the community and to affordable homeownership and preserving homes is really remarkable, and we're thankful to have you as a partner. And I want to thank all of you that are online with us tonight, right? Really appreciate you being flexible and pivoting and joining us in the virtual environment. We're glad that the technology exists to make this fairly seamless. And so we're thankful for that. We know that not all the questions in the chat got completely addressed, but we will do that through some of our social media in the next couple of days. We'll share some additional information that way and in some emails to attendees and things like that. So glad that you are all here. We can't do this without the collective effort of the community. And so working together, we're advancing our mission and seeking a world where everyone has a decent place to live. So thank you and have a great night.